Hi guys, welcome to Young and Limitless podcast. Today we're going to be talking to the very beautiful Lucy. Lucy is 24 and she currently is a lettings administrator for an estate agent. Hi Lucy.
Hiya.
Hiya, what's your favourite kind of food?
Curry.
What kind of curry? Mine's chicken curry.
It's SAG, the spinach curry.
Oh, what was your degree in?
Psychology.
So what's your personal story around anorexia?
I had anorexia, eating disorder, from sort of my early to mid-teens up until, well, I guess it comes and goes even when you're classed as recovered. And I spent quite a lot of time sort of in and out of hospitals for it. And I've now sort of come out the other side and I've learned to manage it. And it's a great feeling, that something I feel, if I've been through it, then I want it to mean something. And if I can help one person help themselves or help somebody else, then yeah, I want to use it. I don't want it to be in vain because it was so terrible.
What triggered it?
There was a culmination of things, and it took me around 7 years to sort of understand it, which is an integral part of sort of getting better, is understanding why it happened and started in the first place. There are certain dispositions that sort of run through people who suffer from anorexia. A big one is sort of being very hard on yourself, and perfectionistic is a word often used, and quite sensitive. And that's a big trait of mine. And I had some family unrest. You know, my parents divorced when I was 14, which is an age where you can very much understand it, but not process it properly. I also had a bad experience that sort of made me question my self-worth and my body and how I wanted to be shown to appear to other people. So I sort of thought, if I don't have these characteristics that make me attractive anymore, I may not be a target. I disappear, then I won't be so noticeable. And it was also a strange feeling of, because I was depressed at the same time, of I thought I was a very bad person, and that if I didn't have food, then I was sort of mediating that, and you know, and showing other people, I'm aware, guys, that I'm a bad person, so I'm not letting myself have this or have enough of this.
Like a form of punishment?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. I couldn't bring myself enough.
So you had some kind of depression before you had the anorexia?
Yes, yeah, I believe so. It definitely came before. Definitely, yeah.
And were you getting any help for that before the anorexia?
It was picked up when I was around 12. I'd had an incident with self-harming, and the school I was at wasn't very keen on displaying or advertising that they had children with problems, or that everything wasn't great. So they said, do you want to go to counselling? And I said no. And they said, and that was sort of the end of it.
Okay.
And, yeah. Yeah.
How did your family react?
Very upset. They couldn't. I said no, and I said it's fine, I won't do it again. And I just sort of acted like everything was fine until they just quit asking if I was okay. You know, they still worried greatly, but there was only so much they could do, which I regret. Probably could have saved many years of.
Yeah, you were a teenager. If you knew better, you would have done better, I'm sure. I believe that.
Yes.
Yeah. So can I ask you more about, you said you didn't feel very good about yourself. Yeah. And then you were using food as a way of letting other people know that you knew that.
Yes.
So how did that work out? In your own mind, did you see that it was working and you were showing people that you knew that, or did it?
It felt as though I needed to. So sometimes I have to check myself, even now, even though my relationship with food is brilliant now. Even now, if I make a mistake at work, or if I feel, you know, oh, I did this wrong, I sent the wrong appointment time to somebody, I then have to check myself and remind myself that I am still allowed to go on my lunch break. or if I'm at my desk, you can still eat this, because I feel if I've messed up and people see me eating, that I'm rewarding myself, or I'm laying myself off the hook, simply from giving myself food. It's strange, but it was that intensified, in that I thought people deserve it, you earn it, and I didn't. It was so strange. Yeah.
So how did you get over that untruth? Because you punishing yourself didn't make it better did it make it better for anybody?
No, it just made everything worse.
Okay.
It upset everybody around me, because it just got worse and worse. And then you feel guilty about upsetting everybody, and you can't seem to get out of that cycle. No, it took me, I think, until my last hospital admission, and something just clicked. And I realized, if I eat or not, if I am kind to myself or not, it does, nothing bad happens if I am. And the best way to feel good is to take care of yourself.
Yes.
You're never going to feel happier or to feel more settled in life if you're not giving yourself everything you need. That was very hard, because I didn't feel I deserved it. So I had a lot of support in sort of figuring out why I felt like that and how to overcome it. Yeah.
So if there's a young person listening who feels like you did, that they're using food as a way of punishing themselves because they know, well, they think they know that's the right thing to do, what would you say to help them?
I would say there are so many other ways to deal with the way that you are feeling about yourself, whether it be, not enough food, too much, and then bringing it up, just eating too much. That any way you use anything unhealthily will never, it's temporary. And then you feel worse afterwards. And I think the main thing is to find just one person, just one that will understand and ask if you're okay, and know that your mental state is not reflected in your physical state. So even if you've gained weight, even if you're not thin and doing what you think you should be to show people that you are hurting, that they understand that it's in your mind, want to know if you're okay regardless of what you're doing outwardly. That's a big thing that I found when I gained weight with recovery. I still felt just as terrible about myself, but everybody assumed I was better. But the problem starts when you're healthy, when you're a healthy weight. That's when you start restricting your food. So assuming when someone is healthy that they are better isn't always the case. So just finding one person to understand. It doesn't matter if it's a teacher or somebody that you don't know very well, or a parent or a friend, someone you can connect with that knows, that doesn't need to see, because you become a freak show if it's visible. Yeah, just find one person that understands.
Okay, so what do you mean by you become a freak show?
Especially when it's weight loss and not weight gain or fluctuation or self-harm scars. I found people almost gained interest in me.
Okay.
And I think part of it was because, especially when I became poorly, there wasn't much social media like there is now. Not many people have seen someone who had an eating disorder, and they become very interested. And a lot of people want to become your friend who weren't, because you are interesting. I know that girl, and yeah, I know her. And you feel, well, who can I trust, because I'm just interesting at the moment. And then that becomes your identity, and it feels very difficult to break away from that when you do start to gain weight, because for some people it gave them a sense of self that they might not have had before. You are that person, you are the anorexic girl. And then to just become you again, which you were in the first place, which is why it's so important to find just one person that knows it's inside and it's not what's happening, what you're doing, what you look like. Yeah.
Wow. So you're saying that some people, it becomes part of their identity and they like that, and then other people don't like it at all.
Yeah, it does depend on the person, and also how long you've been in that place. In there, the more a part of you it becomes, and the harder it is. So my advice would also be, try and not, as much as it consumes you, you can't give it more weight than it has. You can't let it become you, because then when you decide to break away and recover and get better, there's so little left of you. You let it become you, and then you don't know who you are without it. Important to try and remember who you are and what life you want to carve out away from that. And without that, you can't see a way out. Yeah.
That's really interesting. So a different question, for example, if I had a child, I don't have any children, but if I did have a child who was a teenager, I would really want to support them, encourage them. But then I also know from being a youth worker that there's a fine line between encouraging too much and then really paying off the person, say, oh, you're doing really well, and they sometimes don't want to hear that, or they can't receive it, but I need to continue. And I know that, but some parents might think, oh, that they obviously don't want it, or it's too hard, that they just give up.
Yeah, it's so difficult for parents. I don't know how my parents did it. One day, something they said could really help, and another day I would absolutely fly off the handle, and the whole day's meals, the whole week's would just nothing. I think the best advice is try and have open conversations about what upsets or what triggers certain things and what is useful. There's definitely minimize the appearance comments and the comments on what someone's having. And while encouragement is so good, it's hard because when someone says you're doing well, it means you're eating enough. And that can make you feel guilty because, there's that thought of I shouldn't be letting myself have enough. So it's best give praise about the general journey rather than focusing on you ate a lot today, eating good today. You're trying really hard, you're doing so well, and that takes away the focus on food because it's all you can think about anyway. And what you're doing, because in some cases like addiction you have to completely stop things, but with an eating disorder you have to, or definitely in treatment, you have 3 meals and 3 snacks a day. So 6 times a day you're faced with that. Every bite is a decision. Do I do this? Do I not? And then afterwards, so being encouraged but it not being focused on that, it is a nice break. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So also then not saying, oh, you look really good. Could you say that?
I'd say 99% of the people I encountered in treatment hate that phrase so much. So much. Because it means there's been a big contrast in how they used to look and how they look now. And they almost don't want that. They still want to be thin and unhealthy and dying and not letting themselves have this thing that they're terrified of letting themselves have. And it means you've been doing that for a long enough time to gain weight enough for someone to say you look good. And that upsets until you can reach the point that I think of now when people say you look so great. But that's because I know it's a good thing to give myself what I need. But there comes a point where you can't see that. And it's so hard to hear that you're looking well.
What happened to some of the friends you had when you went through the treatment?
So I've met many people. I've been in adolescent units through to adult units, and so many people are doing so well. So many people. I've got 3 friends who've had children and have families. There's some friends who are still in the same place, same hospital where I was with them 4 years ago. And there are some friends who have passed away. So there's so many different outcomes to it. And there's not really a reason. Some people that are doing really well had the same treatment and circumstances as others, and it just feels like it's a little unfair. Yeah.
How did you guys all deal with seeing your people pass away? Did that shock you, or how did you deal with that?
The first 2 or 3 shocked us. And then it's now become, who's next? It's become less and less shocking. The first time we were all, it was someone I was in hospital with. We overlapped, so she came after me and then I left. We overlapped for around 5 months. We lived together, all of us girls did. And she passed away once I'd left, and everyone was just in bit. It gave us we refer to her often as a reason to carry on, because she'd be very annoyed at us if we went backwards. She was always very sort of hard on us about doing what we should. And we still keep in contact with her mum, and as terrible as it is, it's something for me to realise, I don't want that to be my mum, and I have this opportunity. I had the stars aligned and I was able to get out and get through it, and she didn't. And don't waste that opportunity that she wasn't given just because she wasn't able to get through it at the correct time. And everyone that's come after her, I just think it's so sad. And something needs to change. So much of it so there's a lot of factors, but a lot of it can be put down to there's just not enough people there to help, and there's not enough money there. Yeah.
So was enough money? What would you like to see?
I think not just eating disorders, but all mental health problems, longer treatments, and treatments that are put in place far before you reach crisis point. I first referred to, when I went into the adolescent unit, I was first referred for an assessment with the eating disorder team when my weight was low, within the threshold of treatment, but nowhere near low enough. I think I was given a 12-week away appointment, and within those 12 weeks I deteriorated so rapidly that I was carried into that appointment. The appointment didn't happen and I was sent straight to hospital. Then I waited a while to get into that eating disorder treatment, and in that medical ward, I was in a medical ward, not a psychiatric ward, and it was a case of keeping you alive. And in any other illness, if you found pre-cancer or a small tumour, you'd get them in straight away and treat it. You wouldn't say, we're going to wait until it's terminal and then we're going to give you an appointment. If you find a lump, you're seen so quickly. But if your child isn't eating, right, well, she's still eating though, isn't she? So just keep on going. Here's a helpline that will tell you the same thing. So I would like a treatment that as soon as someone is displaying these signs that they're unhappy, that they're not looking after themselves, they're not sleeping, they're not eating, you can take them and you can say they need someone to talk to, and there's enough options for them to try different things that work for them. And then long term, so okay, the initial symptoms are gone. Are you ready to leave treatment? Are you ready to not go to therapy anymore? Instead of churning these children out after a 6-week course of CBT that may not work. Yeah.
Okay, so 6 weeks. That's really quite quick.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, how long do you think it should be?
I had one professional tell me that you need at least the time you've been poorly for to get better. So if you've been struggling for 2 years, some say 2 years to get yourself out of that. It's so dependent on the person, but at this present time, whether someone feels ready or not, the funding and the space isn't there for someone to stay to. I think it's dependent on whether someone feels ready and equipped. Otherwise, we currently have a system of revolving door patients where people are given the allocated treatment, they come out or they leave therapy or they go home, they're not ready and they fall back, and then they reach crisis point and they're put back into the system and they can't establish long-term solid lives because they're never given long enough or the appropriate treatment because there's simply not the money there.
Yeah, and following on, sorry, from what you said about each one's an individual, I mean, you were lucky that you had a mum who was there and supportive. I don't know how many people wouldn't have that. I think quite a few.
A lot of people's parents try, and I know a lot of people who I've been in treatment with, the older they got and the longer they were ill, the less fight their parents had in them.
Oh.
Keep on advocating. And it's hard. It takes a strain on the whole family. Even if at the beginning your parents are there, it's so hard on them to keep on fighting for you. I was lucky that they did, but some people don't have that to begin with. Some people's parents simply cannot cope, and some people are lucky enough, like myself, to have parents that continually advocated for me until, I was better. And if there's not, we need a system where even if someone doesn't have a parent advocating for them, there's that's picking it up. So schools, finding one person, like I said, that truly cares and will do everything they can to help. Yeah.
Wow. So you talked about being guilty, and then you also talked about the feelings that you had about yourself, about who you are. I suppose along with that goes the feeling of shame. And how did you deal with that?
There was shame in different ways. There was shame at first of being a teenage girl isn't easy anyway.
No.
And you sort of feel scrutinized for everything. So you do try and maybe disappear a little bit, or, because you're sick of feeling like that. And then when an eating disorder or whatever destructive behaviors creep in, there's just as much shame. It's just about different things. Yeah, there's a lot of shame and guilt in, self-harming and this eating disorder that, you're upsetting your family, you're upsetting your friends, you're missing out on so much. But it just sometimes seems easier than going through what you were before. It feels like an escape. And it's learning how to deal with it and finding people to talk to that are going through the same thing as you. Talking to your friends about, you might be feeling the same things. As teenagers, I don't think people talk to each other enough, and you can feel quite isolated and that no one understands you, but actually they probably do. Same goes for sort of the people I was in treatment with. We all felt the same way, very guilty. How much time and money was going into our treatment? It's multifaceted. It's so difficult.
You had treatment in the centre, and then you had some kind of therapy to help you unpack and get rid of all the other consequences.
Yeah. So especially with eating disorders, I've been on an adolescent unit which treated all mental health problems for young people, which is centred around groups, a lot of groups and individual therapy sort of weekly. But a lot of my treatment focused at first definitely on physically stabilising people. So there was a lot of medical intervention involved, not a lot of movement allowed, constant monitoring. And that is part of the treatment in keeping someone safe from themselves. And there's the balance between you cannot heal mentally and start trying to work through things and thinking about things if your brain is starved and if your body is fighting for itself. So you have to put on some weight, but without the support, it's impossible to do. So that it's a very fine balance in getting that up. And then once you're healthy enough, they start introducing lots of groups and lots of therapy. I know a lot of people that sort of tried and tested different ones where I was, and everyone had different agendas and different conversations in their therapy, but they sort of try and target it from all angles. So there's, once you're well enough and if you're safe enough, there's socializing and there's normalizing eating and there's getting out and there's structure. You have to get dressed.
Okay.
You have to have the light off. You're only allowed this many cigarettes if you smoke, but it's establishing normal patterns that a lot of people take granted that you are actually looking after yourself by doing it. So it's multifaceted, and there's varying levels of quality between abilities. Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
There's definitely been better and worse places that I have been placed in terms of empathy, physical care. Yeah, there's been some barbaric treatment still, which puts people off from going and getting treatment. But it's changing, definitely.
Thank goodness for that.
Yeah.
So can I go back and ask you something about the characteristics? Because you said there were some characteristics that you wanted or you didn't want yourself.
Yes. I was very sporty when I was younger, and I was quite well developed as well. I had quite a nice figure, which garnered attention that wasn't always great. There was an event, that upset me greatly, and I thought, well, if I didn't look like this, it wouldn't have happened. If I want to wear this outfit, but because I look like this, I can't, and it makes me a target. So if I disappear, and if I look less attractive, if I look more childlike, I won't. Yeah. And that there's a big regression thing as well, and a lot of people I was in treatment with were very in touch with their childhood, and back to an easier time. That's a big thing that you have to let go of as well. You can be in touch with your inner child, but there is also completely regressing. Relying on your parents to feed you and remind you to do things, and that is really appealing as well. So when I was that age, it was those physical characteristics, but also being absolutely terrified of sort of upcoming responsibilities and very daunting. So it's appealing to sort of lean back into that being cared for role that's also very hard to get out of. From what I've seen, the longer people are in treatment, the harder it is.
So how did you deal with the positive, forget the negative, the positives? How did you receive the positive feedback about being a woman, looking like a woman?
After I've been better and
now.
Sometimes it's hard. I just try to embrace it and know that the majority of the time the people around me I feel safe with, and I can't be scared, and I can't hide away. And just because I am a woman doesn't mean that everybody's going to hurt me. So and it is what I am, and that's my biggest thing, is that I can't beat myself up all the time and try and change and be better and be different, because it's impossible. And the way people want me most is happy.
Yes.
So I can't keep on trying to change to please people, because the best version of me is when I'm happy, and that allows me to be the best.
What part of your body do you like the best? Really putting you on the spot.
It's definitely not my eyebrows. They're the bane of my life. I quite like my legs, because I go to the gym. Well, I try to. Yeah, I like them.
So it's nice. You've got good, strong legs.
Yeah.
So what other things do people believe that basically just isn't true?
The biggest one is that it's for girls. I've been in treatment with boys, and it hits them almost harder because no one notices or picks up or believes that it could be that because they're a boy. So biggest one is that it's a girl's disorder. Another big one is that it sort of goes away. A lot of people are shocked to still see adults suffering. There's a big misconception that you sort of grow out of it. So in perceived as selfish still, there's a stigma that by looking after your mental health, you're lazy or selfish. But with many other things, it's almost praised, but for looking after yourself. I can't go here because my immune system's low because I'm having chemo. But if you're having a bad day and your anxiety is really bad, you cancel on someone, sometimes not perceived the same way, which needs to change.
Yeah, so what's it really interesting is because most people I've talked to, in fact, everybody I've talked to has said the key is self-care, knowing that you value yourself. So that feeling of you are valuable and it's a valid thing to look after yourself.
It really is with every single mental illness. So it's not just, are you eating enough? It's, are you sleeping enough? Are you doing enough, but not too much? So if you're really struggling with depression, not leaving the house at all or talking to anyone isn't good. But at the same time, if you don't feel up to going out, are you allowing yourself to just stay at home?
Mm.
Making sure you're doing enough and not doing too much, and looking after your sort of how you instinctually feel.
So what's your biggest tip for self-care?
I think my biggest tip, get yourself something comfy that you love wearing and find somewhere that you like being. So I've got like big fluffy socks and I wear my dressing gown whenever, and just give yourself an evening of no obligations. The housework can be left for a night, your homework, your studying. Get yourself into an outfit you feel comfortable with and go somewhere where you feel safe, whether it be your bedroom or whether it be downstairs with people, and give yourself a complete night off. And the next day, hopefully, you will feel so much better because you've just stopped and completely taken time out for yourself and you've relaxed and reset.
Thank you so much, Lucy. Thank you. I really appreciate the time and your honesty and talking about some issues that they're not the easiest things to talk about. So thank you. And listeners, thank you for listening. And please follow me on Instagram, Young Limitless Podcast, all one word. Thank you and goodbye.